So I'm hanging backstage with the man of the hour, Choong Wilkins. You know that we're claiming you as our own just because you were born here.
I mean, it's certainly, I'm half Singapore and half English, and certainly I feel very much at home in Singapore. And I'm kind of really happy to be here to exhibit, really.
Well, we're really excited by your collection. I mean, things that have been said about you are just absolutely, from north, south, east, west. It's like brilliance in general. How do you deal with that sort of accolade?
That's very kind of you. I'm just glad they're kind of not profanities and they're kind of, positives. I think that, as all kind of artists and designers and craftspeople, the work really hopefully speaks for itself. And I kind of just hope at the end of the day that people can see that it's not also just perhaps a more kind of extravagant proposition in terms of shape and texture, but also there are much more subtle kind of levels of it that it's crafted quite well, and that level of thoroughness is quite important to me.
I think the things people tend to pick up on immediately is the use of adjectives like dark, macabre, and oozing sex. They never even say oozing sexiness, it's oozing sex. And there was this little quote about goblins that I keep hearing.
Well, the collection was inspired by kind of two main points, I'd say. There's a poem by Christina Rossetti called The Goblin Man, and it's kind of to do with tasting forbidden fruit and doing things maybe we shouldn't do that kind of corrupt us. And on the other hand, it was very much looking at the taboo, I suppose, of death. At a particular photographer called Joel Peter Whitkin, and he used parts of cadavers to recreate images that looked like old master paintings, and they were shot in black and white, amazingly seductive, really beautiful, and yet somehow disquieting because of the subject matter. And I think those are the kind of ideas that I would like to have come across in my collection, as well as, there's also a big kind of knitwear focus as well in the collection, and that's certainly a strong point of it. And I suppose what we were trying to do is to maybe inject a little bit more aggression, a little bit more kind of sexual nature, a little bit more kind of lust.
I was going to ask about that because knitwear has traditionally just been really boring. And I think that you've done something with it that nobody else ever really thought about. How did it all sort of fall into place for you?
Well, I think with the knitwear, certainly the challenge was kind of paramount. And it was to try and get knitwear to do something that it didn't really want to do. Knitwear wants to be kind of very body conscious, very flowing, very draped. And so when we looked at the collection, we wanted it to be much more kind of structured, harder, to have maybe a kind of outerwear feel about it. That is an exterior, not just kind of an interior inside a jacket. It's an exterior on its own.
It's not really clothes for people who want to stay at home. They're not for wallflowers. I mean, they really are spectacular pieces. They're like works of art on their own. And they're really for people who kind of want to stand out, don't you think?
I think so, yes. And certainly when I was making these and kind of going through the inspiration and doing the kind of first initial sketches, that became very, very kind of definite quite early on. And the idea that that perhaps we have clothes that just speak without us verbally making any motions or theatrics or shouting. These clothes hopefully speak for themselves, but have a voice of their own. You could stand in a room and your statement would be made, I think. Kind of harking back to part of the Asian influence on the collection, I was looking a lot at kind of old Hokusai prints, but also the samurai idea about space really, and about existing. So the idea that I breathe and I live, and I take up this much space. I'm expansive, and you have to deal with me. And those are the kind of clothes that I would aim to make, and I hope those kind of come through in the collection.
It absolutely comes through. Oops, sorry, I'll do that again. I just kissed my
Sorry.
own thing. That absolutely comes through, Kim. Now, this is a big debut for you in Singapore. Are you feeling a little bit nervous?
Oh, I have such butterflies. I mean, you can see that even as kind of we're talking, there are fittings and we're fixing and really kind of doing a little fine-tuning of things. And, it's really the 11th hour. I do really feel, though, that as a designer, if you aren't working up until the last second, really the last millisecond, I don't think you pushed yourself kind of hard enough. I mean, we work until the first model exits and then it's then it walks, and it's like watching your child kind of go, and it's a kind of a warm feeling. And I think also it's really interesting when you look at it and you don't associate it with yourself. It's something that's independent of you, and you can look at it more objectively. That's kind of again quite an interesting perspective.
Is it even possible for a designer to look at his collection and say, oh, that's not really a part of me?
I think, like, you know, kind of with all controlling parents, like there is a point at some, you know, there's a certain point where you just have to kind of let it go, and it is its own thing. I mean, the other thing as well is that the collection often gets shot by, you know, a plethora of different stylists and photographers, and each one has their own kind of take on it, and I think that's quite interesting as well. That dialogue between not just the public, but really kind of other people in the industry, and how they reinterpret your clothes. And that's quite an interesting thing for me. I'm not one of the sort of designers that's kind of very possessive about exactly how this must or must not be shot. You know, I've seen it shot back to front, upside down, and you know, on people's heads and like all sorts of kind of funny things people have done with it. And again, I almost use it as a critique. So you think about, oh, okay, so they've thought about, you know, using it in this way. They've put it almost as a headpiece. Okay, so next season, how do I work knitwear and spikes into a headpiece? How do I do that? So that's kind of, we just kind of take it on the chin and go forward with it, I think.
Not only is he a really, really great speaker, this guy is a real artist. That's what I think. You've become one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with your debut. And I hope that people are just going to go as wild. Everyone talks about it, and the most interesting that I've found is that everybody here is aware of you and your collection without ever having actually seen it.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't know if that should make you more nervous or not.
There's certainly a buzz.
There's a huge buzz, and well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, really. Thank you.